Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, but most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. There are a couple of rules in the Hangout. Number one, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the show using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next show. In a moment, I'm going to transition across to the Hangout as we do have Sleeping Warrior waiting in the wings to do a quick presentation, but in the meantime, please share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. And with that, I'll say my first introduction. How are you doing, Sleeping Warrior? Good to have you here.
I'm doing okay, man. How are you?
Very well, no complaints.
Good. Well, I'll hog the mic while you go and do your background stuff. If you could just share me on screen, because I want the sound to be passed through.
Let me know when you're ready.
I'm doing it. I'm sending it over. So share screens, sent over.
You ready, yeah?
Yeah, I'm good to go, mate. Yeah.
Okay, you're up.
Great. I just want to get the chat up, so bear with me while I get chat up. Forget it. It's all right. Forget chat. Right. So Sly Sparkane. To be honest, Sly is one of my favourite ball earthers, right? Because his quality of his productions is high, and it's the highest I've seen in a ball earther. And what he's done is he's actually dedicated a 3-minute video to one particular point, but he's done it in such a way that is, well, I appreciate it. I love it. I love the way he does his videos. He's concise. He makes the point clearly, and he deserves kudos. And that's why I'm going to deal with him first, because then I can just refer him back to this video straight after it, and it's dealt with comprehensively. And I'm going to play this without the sound, because you don't need the sound, because what he's saying in this video is that if the Earth's flat, why is it you can only see certain parts of the Isle of Man when you're up a hill? So only parts of the island are seen from a certain elevation. Now look what he's just done there. He removes part of this here, right? That is hugely important. Now that tells me that Sly knows. Right, I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna repeat what I've said many times over. Sly knows the Earth's flat. He absolutely knows, and this for me is a tilt of the hat. He's done this as a tip of the. It's like literally he's tipping his cap to us. Now that bit there is the bit I know. I know Sly knows the Earth's flat. I know he does. Now, what I'm going to talk through is just the first, because we only get to like 2/3 of the way through and then we stop. But he says there would be no way they shouldn't be able to see the shores of the Isle of Man from the hilltop because the observation point, if only 1 foot above the water, is higher than the shores of the Isle of Man across a plain. Well, what's this little band that you've removed here, Sly? Me and Nathan know what it is, but mainstream science doesn't tell us what this is. But you've removed this, and I'm curious as to know why, because mainstream science doesn't explain this, but you've removed it out your video, right? That's the first point. Now, he talks about it, and he says, first they said Ireland was in the pictures. Well, I'll correct you there, Sly. It was a question mark, and the question mark means, was Ireland in the picture? We were asking, was it? And we did think it was. The evidence did lead us to that conclusion, I agree. But it was a question mark originally, and because of the failure of the ballers to disprove it for a long time, then we came to the conclusion that we were in fact looking at Ireland. We've since changed our position because somebody did some scaling work and made a valid point that we thought was correct. And therefore, we've retracted that and said, yeah, it's not Ireland we're looking at on this occasion. So we asked a question, didn't get the answers that we needed to be able to establish the facts. That's down to the ballers. And in the end, we conceded the point. He says the same about Scotland. Same applies. Right. Using various Earth curve calculators, which use geometry, which all flat earthers say are untrue, are based on the geometry calculation isn't untrue. What we're saying is it doesn't match reality. are based on that perfect circle with no atmosphere, which the Earth is not. Agreed. Those measurements are a guideline. No, they're actually empirical. They're actually set to the shape of the Earth. They're not a guideline.
Oh, did he just say the shape of the Earth is just a guideline? What did he
No,
say
he said
exactly?
he said the measurements are a guideline.
24,900 miles, 901 miles. I was corrected
Yeah.
on that 1 mile. That is absolutely set in stone.
Yeah, they're not a guideline, Sly. They're not a guideline at all. They're part of the picture of the science that we are told we live on the shape of a ball, right? That is part of the rule. It is not a guideline. It's a rule, right? These things are not things that you can play with. They're not a guideline that you can breach, manipulate, shape, mold. They're actually set in stone. So that is the wrong word, and I don't know why he's done it, but could just be a slip of the tongue. But anyway, let's not dwell on it. So they say the Isle of Man should not be seen at all on the globe. They say that the Isle of Man should not be seen at all on the globe. No, we don't say that. I mean, we accept that we should see like the mountains. Okay, that's misrepresentation. But I'll let that slide because I'm coming to a crescendo of a point that's brilliant on this. Which, if you wanted to do the perfect circle geometry without an atmosphere, may well be true. Okay, you'd have to get further away, but okay. But why argue numbers? Just take a photo from the shoreline, right? So this is where I go back to this bit here, right? He's removed a big chunk of the thing here, right? Take a photo from the shoreline. Now, this is the bit I want you to focus on, right? What he's done here is he's dropped the elevation of the man down to the shoreline. But watch what he does to the Isle of Man, this mountain here. Watch what happens at the same time as you drop your elevation. What happens, right? It's not shrinking. It's not a scale reduction. It's dropping. What he's trying to show is that it's dropping. But the point is the peak of the mountain drops with the observer because of the curvature of the Earth, right? That's what his model tells us. So watch again. As the man drops, forget the man, but as the man drops, the mountain drops with it, right? Key point. So the mountain must drop with the observer according to his circle, his spherical Earth. Now, at that point, we don't need to do any more. But remember that the top of the mountain has to drop with the observer as the altitude is decreased. The top of the mountain, okay? Now, I asked Ranty Rant, would he send me over the pictures that we took of a boat on the horizon, and it is clearly on the horizon. And the good thing about St. Bees is there is a really nice variable elevation change that you can get really easily. There's like slopes and stuff. Normally, when you're on the beach, you don't have access to slopes. But on this occasion, we do. St. Bees is pretty good for having a variable altitude ability to change your altitude. And what we noticed was this particular boat, when we were high, we were able to see the boat. And what we thought we would do is take interval photos as we descend and get down towards the beach. So essentially, we're doing the same as what Sly wanted us to do. We're doing that change, that elevation change. So the man drops down to the sea, then the top of the mountain dropped down with the man. Well, this is what you would expect. You would expect to see the top of the mast drop with the boat if the boat was dropping behind the curve of the Earth. Now, you're not going to see it in this because they're not set. The horizons are not set on line. But what I want you to, at this point, I just want you to observe what's physically happening to the boat. Now, the argument is it's disappearing from the bottom up. Now, we can see that there's a horizon there, and the boat seems to be disappearing behind this. There's a line. There's another line, another horizon that we can't see. But the boat is natural in its normal state above it, but below it, it appears to be getting mirrored, right? It seems to be getting miraged almost behind a wall of dirty air, refracted layer. Well, I don't know what that phrase is, but we see this, right? Now, there's no science to explain this. We don't get told the science because we're told we live on a ball and boats disappear from the bottom up. Now, as this gets further and further down, we can see that the boat is not dropping behind the curve of the Earth. It's vanishing. It's literally vanishing before your very eyes. But what Rancy's done is he's used the horizon, the actual hard water line, to put the boat back in, and he's lined it all up. Now, there are software out there where you can stack these images and keep the line of the horizon in the same place, and it'll line them all up for you, and you can show this as a nice animation. I don't know what that software's called. I don't have it. I don't know how to do it. This is the only way I can make my point. But what you can do is you can put a straight line across the top of the masts, right? And if it's the case that the observer drops down the mountain and the mountain drops down with the observer because of the apparent curvature of the Earth or the claim of curved Earth, then you would expect the same thing to happen to this boat. If the boat is going to drop behind a curve, in other words, there's a bulge between you and it, then you would expect this to drop with the boat. And guess what doesn't happen? That mast, as this boat starts to disperse and do whatever it's doing, the mast is in the same place. It doesn't change. It isn't dropping. It isn't getting smaller. It's not shrinking. It's literally that mast is in the same place as the boat is disappearing and doing its thing. So at this point, I want to go back to Sly's video, and I want to show you what Sly is claiming. Because is it consistent with real-world evidence? Now, you're looking right now on screen, you're looking at real-world evidence.
We live there, so.
You're looking at real-world evidence of the mast not going down with the boat as we change our elevation. Okay, key point. The mast is not going down with the boat. So, but in Sly's video, look what he shows. The observer drops and the top of the mountain drops with the observer. But that doesn't happen in real world. The boat isn't disappearing from the bottom side up. That has to happen if there's a ball, right? But in real world, it isn't happening. So this peak dropping down doesn't happen. Here's the evidence, and I'm asking Sly to respond with what's going on here. And this is how I know, because no baller has ever mentioned this, right? He's the only one that's mentioned it. Now, we've known about this for a while, Nathan, me, and Ranty. We don't know what we're looking at, and we've described it as like dirty air. That's my phrase, dirty air. Or we've described it as layer of mirroring or mirage or refraction, or I don't know what this is. I just know that it's not consistent with the mast going down with the boat as we drop down our elevation. The top of the mast is in the same place, and up to the point where it seems to be getting mirrored, it's the same. It's normal. It isn't changing. But then at the bottom part of it, there's a line, an imaginary line that goes through it where it's literally being mirrored below itself for some reason, and it's something to do with the angle of observation. It's not to do with the curvature of the Earth because the mast isn't dropping. So shout out to Sly for his video that he's dedicated to us. Appreciate it. Love your work. I know that you know that it's not a ball. I know that you know that it's flat. And I know that because in your video, Sly, you actually removed that part of the mountain right at the very beginning. Now, I'm going to ask Nathan just to put Nathan on a spot a little bit. How do you interpret this part of his video where he removes this lower part of the mountain, right? This is not a part of the job that a baller would make when they're making this point. When they're making this point, this bit, that wouldn't happen. So how do you interpret that from your honest perspective, Nath? What do you think? Why do you think he's done that?
I don't know what is he representing it on a flat plane? Is this supposed to be a flat plane diagram or a sphere Earth diagram?
It's a flat plane diagram, and he's removed the bottom part of it to do with this band of refracted, mirrored, dirty line, whatever. This is consistent with flat Earth. This is our position. But why has he done it? Because he's acknowledging something here by doing it, and I don't know why he would do this on a ball. He's going to argue that it's the obstruction of the Earth caused by curvature, because it's removing the bottom of the thing. But he's doing it on a flat plane. So for me, it's a tip of the cap. He's acknowledging that this is what's going on. For me, he's supporting us there. I know we'll have a ball Earth interpretation of what's going on, but the fact that he put this in is like, ooh, that nobody has done that before on a flat plane. They all draw it like this, but for some reason he's removed the bottom part of it, and I'm like, Sly knows. Would you agree?
I've always thought that.
Sly knows, and this is the proof. This is the admission. That little bit there, Sly knows. Whatever we're looking at in the boat, and it's reflecting itself on like seeming to disappear from the bottom. That bit there tells me that Sly knows it's a peak of the cap. So thank you very much, Sly. You've inadvertently told me that you know that the Earth's flat. Now, I'm sure you've got a perfectly valid nonsense excuse for it to explain to the ballers, but I know that you know that the Earth's flat, mate. It's that simple. However, in real world, the top of the mast of the boat did not drop as we changed our elevation. As we descended, the boat did not drop. It just started to reflect upon itself and disappear behind this band of dirty air, this refraction, this whatever this is. And I'm asking you, Sly, to answer that question. What is the current science to explain what we see? The top of the boat did not drop. It's the same with when Red's rhetoric and Jeranism were having their back and forth. Red showed the exact same thing. He showed the sailboat. He showed that it basically, the top of the sailboat was in the exact same place, but it started to stretch and change its position, and it was disappearing what looked like from the bottom up, but actually it was being reflected. It was reflecting on itself. The exact same thing happened with Red's rhetoric and Joranism. So, Sly, thanks for the video, but the question's back on you. What is the science to explain why we're seeing this layer of refraction, and why did you remove it out of your picture here? Straightforward question, Sly. And if you're in chat watching, I've not got chat open, but if you're in chat watching, I encourage you to join so you can talk us through this, because this for me is tip of the cap. You know, it's flat. Nobody else would do this on this explanation, Sly, only you. Now, enough of Sly, that's Sly dealt with. Now, so shout outs to Ranty for his raw imagery. Now I'm going to respond. I'm going to deal with Miles the Liar Davis from yesterday. Now, if you didn't watch yesterday's show, I'll bring you up to speed. Basically, at the close of play yesterday, we got to this picture, and I was asking people what did they think the value below these rocks would be in terms of the height. We've got a calculated and measured angle, a calculated and measured height from the lens of the camera down to the rocks, and Miles accepts it. He has since changed his position slightly, or told me that I got it slightly wrong by saying he accepts the maths, but he doesn't accept the accuracy of the maths. And I'll come back to that at the end. I've credited somewhere at the end. But if you didn't watch it yesterday, basically, I'll just play through this, and I'll quickly annotate it so I don't kill the time. I just want to bring people up that's not seen it from yesterday.
Anthony has measured the height of that bank at 19.5 feet. I don't dispute the measurement that he got. I accept the measurement that he got, and I say that in this particular video clip.
So he accepts the measurement, but he's told me that, well, yeah, I accept the measurement, but I don't accept your accuracy, which I'll come back to in a sec.
I'm basing my claim on Ordnance Survey map data, and I listened to his claim that he's measured it at the bank to be 20 feet. And I say, well, that could be right. And if the sea level below the bank was another 15 feet.
Well, 15 feet plus 20 feet is 35, but Miles's claim is 40. So he's diluted that there to give him a bit of wiggle room.
Then his measurement of 20 feet agrees with mine.
No, Miles, it doesn't agree with yours, because my measurement of 20 feet plus the 15 feet you want it to be doesn't equal 40.
The big question for me is, where is the lie, Anthony? What lie has been told here?
So here's the lie. In his original video, Miles said that he was at 12 meters of observer height. This is what he actually said.
And so we've got a viewer height of I'm gonna say 12. I'm gonna err on the side of caution there a little bit. Working on the basis of our viewer height of 12 meters above actual sea level at the time.
All right, so he's erring on the side of caution with his actual height above sea. Now, what he then goes to do is present how he calculated it from mean sea level, right? So that in itself is a contradiction. He claims he's at the actual height above sea, but then does it based on mean sea level and an arithmetic, which basically puts him back at the height that he was at the start bar a couple of meters, which isn't the height above water. It's the height above sea level with calculated adjustments based on mean sea level, based on perceptions. And he didn't present any evidence whatsoever to show where the actual height of the water was. At the time, he told us that there was no evidence to support that position, but since he's now changed his position, he said, no, actually, I have a picture. So he bandies that round in a sec, after previously telling us that he didn't have any evidence of the high tide. Anyway.
I don't think viewer height is going to make a huge difference here.
So Miles doesn't think that viewer height is going to make a huge difference, but he previously states that you have to be absolutely accurate with your observer height. So he's flip-flopping again, because he's flip-flopping and that's what he does. He makes it sound persuasive because he's doing the Tony Blair thing with the weapons of mass destruction. And he's basically making a deception sound plausible and logical and tangible, which is what we all want when we're being persuaded or deceived. Tony Blair, Miles Davis. Tony Blair, Miles Davis. Same thing.
Yeah, we're somewhere between 10 and 14, 15 meters above.
So we're somewhere between 10, 14, 15 meters above water height, right? How vague do you want to be? I mean, 10 to 15 meters. I mean, that's a huge band of variableness, but he claims that you must be accurate with your observer height above water. So, I mean, how accurate is he being there? He's got 10 to 50 meters of variation. That's absolute nonsense. So this is what the kind of guy is making it sound persuasive, and he's talking very quietly so you don't quite catch it. But he actually says between 10 and 15 meters there, and demands that we're accurate, and criticizes me when I don't give him GPS position on something that makes no difference because I've already shown it. But anyway, I digress.
Above the actual sea level, and I think 12 is a very reasonable estimate.
So he's going with 12 above the actual sea level. Okay. This is Miles doubling down.
I can also just share a screen to show you where the tide was when we were actually filming.
Now, this didn't previously exist. When originally asked, Miles did not have this information. He's now since got it, and I question where he's got it from. But he's never going to be able to prove it because EXIF data is falsifiable, and I wouldn't put it past Miles to falsify it. So there's no point asking for EXIF data, and there's no point in him saying yes, he's got it, and showing it because it's falsifiable, right? So for the same reason I didn't release mine, and I wouldn't release mine, I don't want the EXIF data, and I'm not going to ask him for it, and I wouldn't accept it if he produced it because it's falsifiable. It's really poor it's really poor standard, or really, there's no credibility in EXIF data.
Bro.
This is a still taken on a different camera at the time that we were actually filming. You can see.
Now, bear in mind, he said he didn't have this before.
Hope that it is near to sunset here.
Right, now he's saying it's near to sunset, right? But we can't see the sun, so we can't make that determination ourselves. But at high tide, when he says that he actually did the observation, it was an hour and 8 minutes, or an hour and 16 minutes, or whatever it was. I can't remember the exact. It was an hour from high tide and sunset. Now he's referencing sunset, but he's not referencing high tide, and they weren't the same. So he's now he's pulling you away from high tide at this point. He should be referencing high tide. He should be saying this was high tide. He's not. He's saying this was just around sunset. That's pulling you away from high tide. That's an important part of that because it's inconsistent with his original story.
I have a precise time for this photograph being taken, if you like, and you can see it, and it is.
So he has a precise time, but we don't. It's no use because he can't prove it with EXIF data because it's falsifiable.
Hey, Arwin.
At the time we were filming, which
Hello.
Morning, Arwin.
Was a few minutes after high tide, and I've got timestamps for the video timings that we took. As you can see, the water level is still down the pebbles on the beach and not up near to the grass bank or the rocks below the grass bank.
Which we're going to test and prove on Saturday because that's exactly where we think the water level is. But now listen to this segment.
This beach here, the pebbles on this beach slope quite steeply. It doesn't look like it could, by comparison with the bank, but there's still it's a relatively steeply sloped. There is a drop down there of several feet from the rocks down to the high water mark. On the basis of the tide heights and mean sea level, I have calculated.
So what he does here, he makes a calculation. We can ignore the calculation because he comes back to 12 meters.
A 50-meter contour line, and we have 10 meters plus 1.76 meters, which is 11.76 meters, plus the height that the camera was on the tripod. Well, we'll call it a meter, and we'll have 12.76 meters, which works out at just over 40 feet, which was my claim.
I agree, it was his claim. Now, at the end of the show yesterday, we left it at this. What we know that the measured height between the camera lens down to the rocks is 20 feet, 19.5 feet. We added an extra foot on it because I didn't go right to the shore level because I couldn't get a straight line. It was affecting the tape measure because the drop on the thing. So we added an extra foot on it. It's 20.5 feet, okay? We asked people, what value do you think the drop would be of beyond the rocks? So, for example, Rick, basically, Miles claims that there's 20 feet here. Now, to support Miles, you've got to give a value of around about 20 feet. Alan B says 20 feet. They Lie Ohio, 20 feet. But Steve Anthony says 10 feet. And I think that's an honest answer from Steve. Me, Nathan, Arwin, around about the 6, 5, 4 figure. Paul Voigt refused to give an estimation. because he doesn't want to throw his friend under the bus. Sly Sparkane refused to give an estimation because he doesn't want to throw his friend under the bus. Tony Vincenzo thinks it's 23 feet. Nick has no L. There's a rock on the beach. It's quite a big rock. It's not likely to be moved. You're not going to be able to relocate that easily. We're going to use this rock as a reference point on the weekend because we're going to see where the water goes up to in relation to that rock. Now, the point was we've got this part wrapped up. It's pretty much sorted at around about 20.5 feet. He needs another 20 feet to get this. Now, since yesterday's show, this is new, right? So you're bang up to date with what Miles's lies are. Right now, this is what Miles is saying.
This beach here, the pebbles on this beach slope quite steeply. It doesn't look like it could, by comparison with the bank, but there's still, so relatively steeply sloped. There is a drop down there of several feet from the rocks down to the high water mark.
So remember, quite steeply, he says. Now, Miles released a video yesterday. And in the video, the only bit that was of any use to us whatsoever from an empirical point of view was this little snippet of a few seconds that I've had to play in reverse and I've had to stretch it out for a bit longer. Remember his words, quite steeply.
This beach here, the pebbles on this beach slope quite steeply, quite steeply, quite steeply.
Does that look quite steeply to you?
Quite steeply.
Now remember, we've got 20 feet for the hill down to these pebbles that are here. This section, not these rocks. The pebbles behind them, that's where I'm stood measuring. So we've got 20 feet, 20.5 feet down to the bottom of here. Miles needs another 20 feet to this rock to have a valid 40 feet elevation above water. That was his claim.
It doesn't look like it could, by comparison with the bank, but there's still, so relatively steeply sloped. There is a drop down there of several feet from the rocks down to the high water mark.
Now, basically, if this is 20 feet down to where that camera is stood on the tripod, because that's where we put our camera when we did it, so 20 feet down to there, Miles has got to get another 20 feet down this beach, right? This is way further out than what the water was, but you can see that the elevation is clearly nowhere near. It's nowhere near, and this is way further deeper down, deeper in towards the deeper waters, if there was water here. The water came to about here. Now you can see that there is a little drop there, but this changes every time the tide comes in. It varies. Sometimes it's a shallower point, sometimes it's more severe. And on Miles's evidence, there's nothing to suggest that there's a sharp slope there the way he describes it. There may be, but he doesn't show it. So we can't prove that assertion, and we know it's a variable. It changes every time the tide comes in. However,
quite steeply, quite steeply, quite steeply.
I don't think steeply could be described to be seeing what we're seeing there, and it certainly doesn't account for 20 feet. Anyway, that's what he needs. Miles needs 20 feet. Now, what's then happened since? As you can see, there is no evidence whatsoever of a sharp ridge that just looks like a shallow gradient, but that's how shallow the gradient actually is. And I'll give him that there is a possibility of a bit of a drop there, but he doesn't show it he can't prove that point because it's not evident in his picture. Now, what's happened since yesterday? So at that point, Miles still fails. Now, what's happened since that point is if you go to Miles's channel, you can see that all the ballers are basically swarming round him like ants round an ant's nest. You know when you attack an ant's nest with boiling water and you pour it in and then they're like all of a sudden, all these millions of ants all come out of it trying to attack the aggressor. Well, that's what's happening right now on Miles's video. They're all coming out and supporting him and basically like acting like ants, right? Now, this picture is from the rumpus. Now, I'm going to ask you guys to interpret what's being shown here. He claims that the tape is supposedly 57 feet in length. Well, I was really clear with that, and it can't be argued, and you can't use the word supposedly to try and dilute my point. It's black and white rumpus. You can't change it. There's no argument or discussion or wiggle room on that. It is 57. It's fact. Can't be changed, rumpus. So the word supposedly is seeking simply to try and dilute my claim, my evidence, my position. Nonsense. Now, what he's done here is I used the vertical staff, right? Now, if you run a vertical line up, you can see that it's like a degree, maybe 2 degrees off vertical. It's not absolutely perfectly vertical, but it's close enough. Now, in the video that I actually did it, my actual video, not this part of the video, but the other part where I actually did it, it's nearer to vertical than what this is. So he's picked a favorable non-vertical part. However, What he's done is he's added this yellow line in, and what the yellow line is according to Rumpus, this yellow line is an adjustment for the horizon because he said the camera's tilted. Now that is a credible argument, but it's totally and utterly unnecessary if you've got a fixed vertical. Now he's added a horizontal in to try and make the vertical look nonsense, right? But if you have a vertical in the picture, you don't need a horizontal. That's why we were putting a staff in the ground to give us a vertical. Now, on the actual picture that I did the vertical on, it was vertical. On this one, it isn't vertical. And by putting in a deduced horizon, it makes it look worse because he's making this. This is literally conjecture. What he's done is he's had to use this little bit of horizon here, which is land, not water. He's had to use this little bit of horizon here to form a horizon to give him this deduced horizon. And even if this was done accurately, which it wasn't, because if you extend the line out, it doesn't match the line that he's put in, it's still conjecture, right? It's unnecessary because the picture that I did it on is vertical. Now, the problem with that is there is no reason for him to change it. He's literally changing the evidence to try and suit his premise, right? Now, there's a program called Rotation Pilot, and in the program it says, basically, with Rotation Pilot, you no longer have to guess on how many degrees you should rotate your image to adjust a visual slope. Now, obviously, that's what Rumpus has done. He's had to guess how much what's he got? He wants to compensate for the fact that the camera is not sat perfectly horizontal with the horizon. He's ignored the vertical aspect that it actually is consistent with. However, you can basically says you should rotate your image to adjust a visual slope, often appearing on amateur photographs. Set a vertical or a horizontal axle in the software, and it'll do the rest. But see how it says you can set a vertical or a horizontal. You don't need to do it on horizontal, Rumpus. If you've got a given vertical, which we did, we had a vertical, not on this picture, but on the picture that I actually used, it was vertical. If you do it on a fixed vertical, Rumpus, then you have the angle here, and it's the external angle. So you have that set in stone, can't be argued with. You measure it, and it gives you a value. From there, you can get the internal angle. You don't need a horizontal. What he's done here is he's tried to fudge the maths, fudge the evidence with maths to make it more, because he needs that angle to go from 20 up to 30. And the way he's done it is he's conjectured a horizon line based on this horizon up here, and that's land, by the way, that slopes off. So you don't actually know what the horizon is because you can't tell where the water is. You don't know the horizon, but he's guessed it. He's guessed it to try and make it look fudgy, and he's claiming that it supports 30 degrees. Now, if you actually do the maths on this, it turns out to be 28.7, I think it was, on the maths from memory. But he's rounded it up to 30, right, based on an inaccurate, like a conjecture line. It's a deduced horizon based on nothing. And he's rounded it up to 30 to support his pal. Now, the point is, he already had a vertical. So there's no need to do this, Rumpus, and he knows that. So the question becomes, why did you do this? You have a known vertical. Is it that Rumpus didn't know you could do it on a known vertical, which in my picture was vertical? Or was he fudging it deliberately to try and support his mate? Now, here's the thing. Rumpus claims that, apart from me being a twat, he claims that if I go back with a spirit level and actually measure it, and I'm going to do this this weekend just for Rumpus, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and I'm going to stand in this place. I'm going to do the exact same measurement again. And I'm going to show that my 20 degrees angle measured angle wasn't wildly inaccurate. And I'm going to show that his 30 degrees, which is actually 28.7, I think it was, is nowhere near accurate. So, Rumpus, I'm going to call you a liar. I'm going to say that you've literally fudged this evidence to try and support with maths, to try and support your friend, based on this deduced horizon that's totally unnecessary and inaccurate at best. And it was based on a horizon that the only part you can see is this, which is land that is sloping down in any event and is literally nonsense. So don't try fudging maths with me. Don't try fudging evidence physics. You guys think that you've got all the answers when it comes to maths. This is exactly what you're doing. You're applying nonsense maths to this position to try and support the assertion that Miles isn't wrong. No, guess what? Rumpus is lying. He's fudging the evidence here. He's trying to support his mate. And this angle stands because we had a vertical when I did it. You didn't need a horizontal based on a deduced horizon that's inaccurate in any event. And you didn't need to round up your maths to support your mate. Rumpus, you're lying. You are literally lying. You've made this up. Now it's based on good science, right? It is credible. However, the way he's done it is really wishy-washy. There's no accuracy whatsoever in this line, and it's there simply to try and support the assertion that there's 30 degrees when there's only 20. Rumpus, you're lying. Anyway, that's the end of the presentation. That's the end of the formalities. You are bang up to date with where we're up to right now. Rumpus is using maths to fudge figures and make it sound something it isn't. And Miles is still a liar. He's no higher than 25 feet, and he's claiming 40. Anyway, that's the end of my ramblings. Arwin, how are we today, sir?
Me, I'm doing fine.
Glad you're still
I'm
awake.
echoing.
I thought I might have sent you to sleep.
No, I'm fine. No, yesterday it's not like a permanent. I'm not gonna complain about you guys rolling that ball back up the hill every day. It was just something that was on my heart, and I wanted to speak out about it. That it was said, and I'm perfectly fine now. So
Did you see
yeah,
the
you keep on
slice of
rolling
arcane?
that ball. Just keep on doing it. I understand. I saw back the hangout of yesterday, and I heard a lot better what Nathan was saying, and yeah, I agree. I agree what his stance was. So I agree. Just keep on doing it. Yeah, I personally don't really have the patience to get as nitty gritty as you guys are doing, but I fully support your efforts here.
I've actually
And I
changed my
really
attitude
hope
since you
it
said
will
that,
get
Arwen.
to something really good eventually.
I've actually changed my attitude since you said that and discussed it with
Really,
Anthony
Nathan?
since. So my attitude adjustment has come directly from what you said, and that is that, in my humble opinion, this observation of wind turbines made by Miles Davis is actually quite low priority in the scheme of things. So it may be the case that when we go up there this weekend, we get to addressing Miles Davis' claim in a bit more detail. But for me, it's a very low priority.
Now, me and Nathan don't agree on this point. I want to
You're
discredit
confusing me.
Miles. Not
Every
because
time
I,
I
discredit Miles.
switch around, you switch around. What is this?
Well,
Making
it's
the show
context, isn't
interesting.
it? It's
No, I'm
remembering
agreeing
the
with you.
context
I
of
agreed with your sentiments from yesterday, and we're spending a lot of time pushing a ball up the hill. And when you put it in that context, you think, well, what's it going to achieve if we get the ball to the top of the hill and we win and it stays there? Well, in this instance, with this observation, virtually nothing. You know, that's my attitude. Whereas the 35 feet on Google and 52 feet on Google claimed observation points are far more useful to our cause and our claims. So for me, they are top priority.
Okay. Okay, in that sense, then we have come to an agreement. But yeah, I really didn't want to push you too much yesterday. I just felt it needed to be said. That was all. And I
And I
understand
thanked you.
that you have
I
to go
thanked you too.
into this detail. So
Yeah, I got in touch
But-
after the show and thanked you for it, Arwen. You know, I am very open to criticism and I want to hear, you know, I said to you, your sentiments echoed a lot of people's in the chat. So, you know, I want to hear that stuff. It's, you know, I don't care if it's bad or, you know, a criticism of the show or whatever. I don't care. You know, I've said it from the start. If you come on and you want to criticise me and my techniques, you're welcome to do so. And the same applies to anything being said on the show. If it's getting tedious, fine, tell us. But we'll then give our explanation as to why we're covering the minutiae, the detail, because it's necessary in some instances, although it does get boring. So I'd rather hear that, though.
no, indeed. But yeah, it was mostly me getting worried that the regular flat earther public was just drifting away. Like they didn't want to hear the same damn thing over and over again. And it was basically only the most lunatic ballers that are completely obsessed with trying to disprove us that would hang around eventually. So that was my worry,
Fair
that
enough.
we'd just be surrounded by lunatics only, and all the rest of the flat earths would be staying away. And yeah, that's, I don't know, it's just not as amusing unless, yeah, I guess you're
It isn't, but you've got to give credit where credit's due to, and Ranty did this, and I've done this already. I don't know if Anthony will, but nevertheless, you give credit to Miles. You know, he's gone out, he's done this observation, he's put the effort in, and as Ranty phrased it, he's not a keyboard warrior. He's doing practical work in this regard to try and debunk us, and that has to be commended. The same applies to Rumpus when I tip my hat to him. He put a lot of work in, and that is, it deserves being commended. It shows how seriously they take this.
But on the other hand, do they really deserve that type of credit if we catch them actively mechanizing and lying?
That's my point.
Then they're
That's my point.
really just putting more effort in trying to break things, really.
I agree with
is that
Arvin.
also commendable?
Well, it's not commendable to lie, and we wouldn't commend people for lying. But if they do, and we're focused on the minutiae, we can point out where and how, and that's what we're doing. But the criticism for you is, well, when you're pointing out how and why they've lied, and it's always going to be very tricky, slippery, whatever word you want to use, you've got to get into the nitty-gritty of the details to expose that. So every time they lie, I hope they, get as frustrated as they do and threaten to mass spam the channel. Hello, I'm a moron. How are you doing?
Oh,
can you hear
hang
us?
On. What I'll do, Nath, I'll drop out of this. Hang on.
Nah, I'm
Depending on what
gonna
happens
get
in the
stuck.
next 5 seconds.
I've kicked him because he didn't say hello.
Yeah, because I think Arwin might... Do you know what? It might be better if we just invite... Bring Arwin, if you drop out of the call and then join on Skype, that would leave the lobby for anybody on the baller side that wants to go and play with themselves in the lobby and snipe each other out. How does that sit?
He's all right for now. No one sniped him
Nah,
out. So
yeah, I'm
just,
fine.
If you get sniped, then join on Skype. Great.
Maybe
but
Alan
for now,
B wants to join.
Maybe.
He's always kind of fun.
As always, the doors are open to everyone. Everyone is welcome.
Right. But
Slice
anyway,
it,
you were
Skype.
saying that you're now having a new project that is on the horizon. Pun meant. That you're now going to approach. You were saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different things that I think Anthony and Ranty want to achieve with their cameras. I mean, I've got an iPhone, I've got no sophisticated camera equipment whatsoever. I do have a telescope. Whether or not I go and get it, I don't know. But I may well get that telescope if I get an opportunity before this weekend to take that up. But yeah, there's a couple of things that are potentially back on the table that had been formally taken off the table, one of them being Northern Ireland. So in essence, we've since published someone else's photo that was taken maybe 7 or 8 years ago of the Isle of Man, and Snaefell, sort of midpoint in the island, if you like, was 68 miles away, almost 70 miles away. And I'm sure if we were to take the measure and look a bit more closely, I'm sure we'd get 70, 71, 72 miles in that image on a very clear day from about 500 feet altitude. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's a very high point next to the observation points that Anthony and Miles Davis have used. Hello, Flat Earth Destroyed. Can you say a quick hello?
Hello, how you doing? Quick question. So I take it you're ignoring Miles's 130 hypotenuse measurement. Now you're focusing on this, and that's what this is all about. And that's why Riley rage quit last time, didn't he? Because the truth smacked him right between the eyes. So you can't deal with that.
Ignoring Miles what?
Change your topic. Your goalpost changed again.
What's your question?
What was it you said that we were ignoring?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, what's your question?
Has he gone?
His sound was breaking up. I wonder.
Give him a second. He might just be struggling with audio or something. We'll wait for him to hopefully come back and ask us a specific question. He thinks we're ignoring something. That's the bit I caught.
Yeah, he said, why is it you're ignoring the Miles's something or other and focusing on this? Well, I'm not aware that we're ignoring something of Miles's. If there's new evidence out there or something that you feel that we're ignoring, bring it. Show us where we're ignoring it and we'll address it. I'm not ignoring any part of Miles's nonsense. I love all of it. He's the gift that keeps on giving. The more he does, the better it gets for us, because he drops himself in big holes that he can't get out of. And I demonstrated that before, because his little 3 or 4 second part of his video that we presented showed that there was definitely no way that there was an extra 20 feet there. Yet you guys all think that for some reason he's still credible. And all that's happening is all the ants are coming out the nest and they're all supporting him and holding his willy, saying, "Oh, it's okay, Miles, we're on your side. Great job, Miles, great job."
Well, simultaneously, we're told that this show's getting boring and we shouldn't be addressing these things. So we've got the guy on the panel saying, why aren't you looking at something else of Miles's? And we've spent the last 2 or 3 episodes going through the details of Miles's bullshit. So what exactly do you think we're ignoring?
Is he still in or has he dropped?
Still there, just seems to be ignoring us.
Should we call him a coward and see if we can get him to come out of his hole? Or should we wait patiently?
Anything? Flat Earth destroyed? Anything at all?
John Watson said, they're not ants, it's flies on a turd.
Ants.
So anyway.
That's where your second observation was taken from, and that's where all the composite images were taken from. This whole thing going on about the 20-foot business is just a change, a diversionary tactic used by yourself. Focus on what you need to focus to prove your point. That's the issue you have. That's
we're debunking someone else's point.
Proves you wrong.
Don't seem to be keeping up. This has nothing to do with the Isle of Man observation, and everything to do with a claim that is apparently supportive of a sphere Earth made by Miles Davis. So this has nothing to do with those observations. You understand that, right? We're looking at someone else's observation of something different. Do you get that? The world doesn't revolve around the Isle of Man, although you Globers seem to think that everything we talk about is Isle of Man. Again, long, prolonged silence after a very specific question is levelled at Flat Earth Destroyed. That was a new point, by the way. You didn't in any way actually clarify any of the gish gallop that you came in and said. You've just started a new point, just to point that out to you. So I'll ask you the first question again.
Now, he was
what exactly
playing a
do you
video.
feel we have ignored? What precisely have we ignored?
I don't know if it's you, Nath, but I'm not hearing him speaking at all. And he came in mid-sentence on that last outburst. I don't know if it's
That
because I'm on
last
Skype.
outburst was him playing a video clip. He's not talking. The first time he was talking, now he was just playing a video. It was not his voice.
Now let's just get rid of him.
There he goes.
That was pretty convincing, though, if that was a tape. I didn't pick up on that. Well done, Arwin.
I'm not sure.
No, it was not his voice. It was not the same.
Fair enough.
I think he was trying to play a Rumpus video or something like that.
Al K says, this comes directly down to one thing. Liley is incompetent. Yeah, Al K claimed that the height of that mound was 20 feet as well. He said it was at least 20 feet, 20-something. For some reason, Miles thinks that there's another 20 feet below where Al K was stood with his rod. And I wondered whether Al K knew that Miles was sighting 40 feet and why you didn't call him out on it, Al, when you knew it was nowhere near 40 feet. Are you collaborating with your dishonest warrior? Or did he work as a lone renegade?
Hey, by the way, I just got a new idea of something that could be interesting to work out, considering optics.
Speaking of liars, Riley, do you remember when you said you threw a 66-foot tape down the same cliff that Miles did and it didn't hit the bottom, and then you changed your story to say it hit the bottom and you had tape to spare? That's a complete lie.
Actually, this is a recording, isn't it?
You lied 100%. We all heard you say
this is the same recording.
Yeah, it's just a recording.
This is a recording, isn't it?
It's a troll playing a recording. It's not a person.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's all they've got.
Anyway,
reruns. They're throwing reruns at us. That's brilliant. Throwing reruns at us. Okay. Marvellous.
Yeah. So right now, let's just be clear, right? Sly's going to answer why it was that on his model when he played it, that he removed the bottom part of the mountain, right? And that I credited was the tip of the cap. So if you didn't catch it, Sly, go and watch the first part of the hangout, because I addressed your video directly and I've left you with two questions. The second question is, why doesn't the mountain drop? Oh, by the way, GeoStreamer, if you're still about, do you mind if I use the GIF that you've sent me in the chat? I'd like to use that, please.
Can I please finish what I was saying?
Sorry,
Arwin.
Yeah. No, that's fine. The troll with the tape recorder just popped in, so this was a distraction. But I had an idea. It's something I would like to find out, kind of. And that is, well, we have figured out by now how perspective works. That there is this apparent slant at the first horizon, as we call it, and that after that, there's a refraction zone. But what I would like to find out is if it would be possible to figure out if it depends kind of on what type of lens is watching into the distance. If this slant point differs in distance depending on the lens, this would be very interesting, and also it would show that it really is not a physical curve but an optical effect. So for example, if you take two cameras that have different different, how do you say, sharpness, different zooming capacity, and then use both these cameras to zoom in on, say, a watery horizon, perhaps with an island in the distance, and boats. That would be great if there were boats. If you then can film that and see if, depending on the lenses, the refraction point, the point where the refraction zone starts, would be different in the same time of day from the same angle with different cameras. I think that if we could prove that it is purely an optical effect, that would bring even a bigger crush to the curve of the globe, basically. Just an idea.
Just answering Sly, I'm not going to use Geo's GIF without expressed consent from Geo, because that would be potentially a copyright strike, and I wouldn't like to risk that on Nathan's channel without expressed consent from Geo. Now, Nath, would you mind sharing my screen? I'd like to reassert the question to Sly in reference to the actual evidence, because
so Riley, thanks for completely ignoring what I just said and distracting to something entirely different. Thanks for completely walking over me. Didn't you hear something? I just said something. Could you perhaps reply to me instead of a troll in chat?
Okay. I was reading and responding to Sly, setting up the slide for the next. So the answer to your question is I didn't listen or didn't answer or hear your question because I was concentrating on something else. However, I give way. You can have the mic.
Can I address you, Alwyn? Because I was listening. Yes. So, in all honesty, I don't think it will make a difference. I'm making a prediction as opposed to addressing your very cogent point, which is basically that if you had two different cameras pointing at, say, the lighthouse at Morgold, would you have a different band of refraction, or would it be exactly the same? And I suspect...
Well, that is what I'm wondering. If it depends on the type of camera lensing, if it's not even like the refraction zone will always be there, because it seems to be there in every observation. Like if there is sight, if there is something that can observe, then there will be a refraction zone as a natural side effect. But it's just interesting to see if there is a difference in where the refraction zone starts, basically. If you could prove that using different lenses in the same location at the same time of day.
I was so quick to say that I don't think it'll make a difference is because last time Anthony and Ranty were at St. Bees, we were Skyping back and forth frequently and basically in good contact, and I could see a lot of what they were looking at. Obviously, it's through an iPad screen or whatever. But at one stage, Anthony held up his phone and took a picture of the back of Ranty while he was taking stacked images of the Morgold Lighthouse. And he said, here you go, here's Ranty actually taking that particular picture that I was asking about, or that series of pictures right now. So I get the snapshot, zoom in on it, and sure enough, you can see, exactly the same outline, obviously in much, much, much lower resolution than Ranty was getting on his super high camera, but he's zooming in on it. But in terms of the artifacts, I can only assume, or I can only deduce from that what you would get is exactly the same if you had different zoom lengths. I'm also pretty certain, again, this is going back about a month or maybe even 6 weeks, when Anthony's missus showed me pictures from her camera, totally different focal length, totally different zoom, totally different camera, and the effects, the actual what you could see in the image wasn't presented at such a close range, but the effects were the same, and that was glaringly obvious. So from my personal experience looking at images I've been presented with, from an iPhone, a P900 and a D5, I think is the other camera, or whatever, a different SLR camera rather than a point and shoot camera, they were all pretty much of a muchness in terms of what they presented. So I'm pretty sure it's down to the distance that you're looking at and the altitude that you observe from. And it's a very interesting point, which I hope gets hammered home when we actually do the presentation of the flat Earth model of Isle of Man, which is to say that the observation height makes a massive difference to how much stuff gets cut off from the bottom, which is what Ranty showed with the boats. So I will be positively encouraging people to get a bit higher. Don't put your tripods in the water, which is pretty much what Sly and various other people are trying to get everyone to do. Well, if you could do it in the water, you'd prove flat Earth. Oh, piss off. Get higher. Do these observations above the circle of confusion that they want in their images, or they want in our images when we present them. They want the bottom cut off stuff. So get a little bit higher and get above that refraction zone. Exactly. That first horizon point that you're talking about is where the cutoff point comes. Now, I'm not that great at describing this when I haven't got pictures to reference or Chris's model in front of me, because it's really clear when it's being explained to me, of course, but to be able to parrot it back verbatim it's not completely solidified in my mind yet, and I'm sure Anthony will agree. That's why he continues to call it dirty air, even though Chris has probably explained it to us about half a dozen times. It's difficult to wrap your head around it, but hopefully when us, the laymen, get it, we will be able to paraphrase it in such a way that an audience can understand it. And it's far easier when you've got a model to show it.
I think I got a pretty clear way to explain how it works, what you're actually seeing, the slant. Basically, where the refraction zone starts, everything after that goes on in a straight line at an angle. So, or an apparent angle at least. So it keeps on going from then on in a straight line. And that makes it a slant, like one single corner that starts at where the refraction zone starts, basically. That is what you get optically out of it.
You and Arev both did. Arev's was a bit more, he was doing it freehand in a paint program, but the effect he was describing is exactly that. And I'm sure you've done it once with a visual pictorial example as well, have you not?
Yeah, I did a basic drawing. It's not very good, but
no, it was good. Yeah. Don't put it down. I remember it. It was good.
No, yeah, it was technically correct, but it was
exactly that. But that's all that matters.
More interesting to look at.
Sure, it wasn't visually exciting, but who cares? It was accurate and it explained it well. I remember it reasonably well, even though it's probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. But yes, you understand this concept, but a lot of people don't, including me. Not enough to explain it.
Okay, well, I would love to dedicate some special time to explain this more on your show or on a special segment if you'd like that.
Definitely.
No problem. I would love to explain it more. It's getting more solid in my mind how it really works, so I'm getting better at explaining it. And with some visual assistance, that would work out really well, I think. But as for the what I just suggested is... you're basically saying that you think that's very unlikely that the refraction zone, where the starting point is, that it would differ depending on the observer, that it would always be the same, that it's completely and only dependent on the air quality and the height of the observer, and that there is no difference in the refraction zone where it appears to start depending on the observer. That's what you're saying.
I suspect so. I mean, based on all the examples that I've looked at, and Ranty's example going down the hill and having the boat cut off, and then going up the hill and seeing more of the boat, that's the conclusion I can draw. Again, there's been plenty of observations of the same stuff that I've looked at in recent days, and yeah, I'm happy to at this stage go out on a limb and draw that conclusion that it would make no difference. The only thing that would make a difference is the clarity of the day, i.e. the weather, and how high you are. And your actual observation ability gets worse as you get lower. And there's probably a tipping point. I don't know what that tipping point is.
What is beyond that slant. That's logical. And the rest, it seems to be purely dependent on the lensing effect of the air. And while we know that refraction officially, and the standard refraction, which is the most common thing around, that's why it's standard and not non-standard, as the ballers love to reference everything to, that the standard refraction basically causes light to bend upward, and that is what causes this apparent slant effect, which could be mistaken for a curvature.
Yeah, it's a co-opting of exactly that
but
effect.
It all seems to depend on a lensing effect, almost like as water in an aquarium. It's well known when you look into an aquarium that's filled up with water, that the thickness of the water bends whatever you see pretty vividly. It usually looks like end of the aquarium that